Hello, Will here, and we are back with the Sunken City for the final video in this building the Sunken City short series kind of thing. And so this one is going to be basically, I'm going to have a little tiny tour around the city because the vast majority of the city is done. There's still a few bits and pieces still left to do, like in ways of like creating so many NPCs that you'll find in place. You know, some of the followers, named characters. The people who will bring it to life, basically. And obviously, and obviously stuff like any kind of like lore books and stuff like this and stuff like that. But of course, obviously, I'm going to be working with Dragonblade on the books. He's given me some books to write already and little journal passages and stuff like that to write down already, but obviously we'll be seeing if there's any more, this, that and the other, tra-la-la. So that's why I'm not like putting those in now, just in case if it wants to give me any other lore books or journal entries or anything like that to add in. So, but what we're going to be doing in this video is basically we're not going to be connecting it to the world map, because that's just basically connecting doors, which I don't think I actually shown how to connect doors actually before. So I'm going to show you how to connect door very easily. But the main purpose of this video is to actually go over Nav Meshing. Now this is not going to be some in-depth advanced tutorialization on how to do nav mesh into ways of what all the numbers mean, what all the phrases mean, what all the little tiny itty-bitty details mean. This is just going to be the basics of nav meshing and the basics of what you need to know when it comes to nav meshing interiors, because nav meshing world spaces is similar but a little bit different, because obviously normally a world space is a much larger place, and obviously how a world space sets up its grid system, because it has a kind of like a grid system, because it has a cell system, whereas an interior cell doesn't have a cell system. An interior cell is literally just one big ginormous infinite cell, whereas a world space is multiple cells put together. Because it is technically, it does go on and on for an infinite amount, but obviously it has to procedurally generate itself, otherwise the game would just not run correctly. But right, so first off, we're gonna quickly show you how to do doors, because doors, pretty simple. And when it comes to nav meshing, there is a thing to actually in relation to doors with nav meshing. So I suppose it only makes sense to bring up doors, primarily load doors, not so much just the door that you activate, it opens up into another room. I'm talking about like an actual load door that takes you from one place to another place via a loading screen. So as for example, here we have a load door. It's just basically a pulse or gem door. It's from the Dawn Guard DLC. This acts as a load door because you can't open it per se as a normal door. It's just a shiny, see-through, kind of wibbly wobbly thing, But so we got one here, but we also have another one just on this side here. Now, if I was to press M on the keyboard, it brings up markers. Now, if I zoom out on this, there's going to be like loads of markers. There's a lot of markers. It's a lot of mess. So, but lucky enough, we don't need red belt, all that stuff. The main marker you are actually interested in is this one, the yellow marker. So this yellow marker is what basically has ties to nav mesh with, basically. So obviously the yellow marker is basically where, when you go through a load door, the yellow marker here represents basically where your character will spawn in the new area. So you know, I'll go through the door on this side, on the far side over there. I come out of this door here, and this is where my character will end up. And in the ways of with these and nav meshing, you use these when it comes to finalizing nav meshing to allow followers to follow you through doors. Otherwise, if you don't finalize it, then followers will not follow you through doors. But you can easily tell when a nav mesh has been finalized, and we will cover that later on in the video. So let's just say I want to connect this door to that door. Let's just, for example, what you're going to do is just basically you're going to select the door, you're going to double click it, and you're going to get this screen here. And you got all these things. Now, your one might look a little bit different to mine. Mine looks like this just because I have a creation kit modification that I got from the Nexus. But normally these are just in a straight line like this. They're not like tabbed upwards like this. But with the door, what we're going to want to go to is we want to go to teleport. Now obviously these doors are already connected as well, but you're going to want to go to teleport, and then you're going to come up with this screen here, and you want to see this little box here, and it says teleport. Normally that would be not marked. There'd be no tick inside it or anything like that. So what you want to do is you want to basically click on that little box, and a little tick will turn up inside. When you do that, these then become active, and you can basically activate these, bring up some drop down menus, bada bing bada boom. Now if you're able to find, so you want to find the door that you're looking for. In this case we're looking for a door that is in the Sunken City, so I would select Sunken City. But if it's obviously to a place that you've built, then you'll be looking for the editor ID of the place that you have built, and then you'll just put that in that drop down menu there, and then the reference is basically which door you want to connect the other door to. So I want to connect this door to this door. Though technically they are both portal gem doors, the one on the other side of that wall has a slightly different reference number compared to this one, because it's not the same door, it is a different door, so it does have a slightly different reference number. So you can do it manually, and you can find it on here as long as you know which door you're using. But if you're not entirely sure which door you're using, because let's say you're doing a ginormous door move, which I've done before in the past, and you've got like something like 46 doors. Yes, I did door moves with 46 doors. Trying to find, sometimes just making sure that you're not selecting a door that leads you to a place where you don't want it to go, it's very likely going to happen. So the easiest way to do this would be to select reference in render window. So then what you're going to do is you're not going to click on that straight away, because the problem is I can't see the door on the other side of that wall. And when you click on the select reference in render window, it basically freezes your render window into the ways that you can still zoom in and out, but you can't actually pan the camera. So your camera is locked in place, but you can zoom in and out. So what you're going to want to do is basically you want to go to the other side of the wall first, for example, and then come to this door. So this is the door I want to connect the other door to. Then I would select the select reference in render window, and then the arrow will turn into sort of like a crosshair. It'd be a crosshair. So when you first put it on, it'll be red. It'd be a red crosshair. So actually, screw it. So as you can see, it is now a red crosshair. But if I go over the door, it turns white. So basically, once it's turned white, that means you can select that door. And then you'll just basically double click on the door, and then that will be it. That's it. Then you will have a marker here. Well, technically this will start off in the door, but you can just move it to wherever you want it to be. So you'll have one marker here, and you'll have one marker just there. There it is, just there. So if I go up, you can now basically see there's two markers, this marker and this marker. So basically these markers are basically telling the game that these two doors are connected. So if I activate this door, I end up here, and if I activate this door, I end up here. And that's it. General gist of how to do door connections. Because they do play a little bit of a part in nav meshing. But right, so with that little tutorial out of the way, now we're going to move on to the actual going for a little tour around the Sunken City. Now I'm not going to go into the game to do the tour around the Sunken City because it's just, I can't be asked to go loading in this, that, the other. So we're just going to do it via the creation kit because it's just easier for me anyway. But you know, so we got the tour. Now, so obviously some of these rooms you would have seen already, you know, this, that and the other, la la. So obviously I can turn the lights on, off, I can turn the sky on and off. Is the sky on? The sky is on. So obviously you've seen the entry hall already, but it has slightly changed a little bit. You know, it's not massive change, it's just all I've done is just put a little bit more decoration on the walls, because originally they were just bare stone walls. But I've just slightly changed it, so there's there's a little bit of greenery on there to match everywhere else. We then carry on. We also, if you've watched this series, you would have also seen this room down here. This room hasn't changed. This room is still the same as it was. So I'm not going to worry about that room too much. If you want to see what that room looks like, I've waited till the mod's released, or just go back to I think either the first or the second video, and you'll see the room in there. So if we carry on, we got a little bit of a living quarter here. Lovely, lovely living quarters. Now I do have one follower in here already, so this was just one follower that I was making. This was the follower I made in one of the other previous videos. So she's still there, just standing, staring, contemplating life. And then obviously up there you got a little bit of the kitchen. La la, kitchen. So if you were to get the camera to go all squiff on you, how lovely. If you go to, if you go up here, there's like 5 doors, 5 portal doors. And what all these portal doors do, I'm actually going to go up on this one. As you can see, we got room 1, room 2, room 3, room 4, and the player room. So there is an actual player's bedroom, so to speak, actually in here. So, and basically these doors correspond to each, this door here corresponds to that one, this door here corresponds to that one to that one, that one to that one, that one to that one. Boom. If we carry on up here we have basically where you'll find all the merchants, which I believe we did cover in a previous video as well, so I'm not going to dwindle on this too much. And I can't remember if I explained in the previous video, which this is more for Dragonblade, who's the person who's sort of like what's the word? Collaborating with me on this mod, as the Sunken City is more his part of the collaboration. I'm still the one building it, mind you. I'm the one building it, but he's the one who's creating all the stories, who came up with the idea for the Sunken City. He's coming up with some of the lore behind the Sunken City, whereas I am doing all the lore and stories behind the buried city, otherwise going to be known as Tartarus. But yeah, so he wanted this to be a bank, kind of like a bank kind of thing. These two here, this one and this one, were going to be bankers. But unfortunately, without using external scripts, even though I wouldn't know how to do it in the first place anyway, but there's no way to create an actual banking system. That's the thing, there's no way to create an actual banking system. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't act a bit like bank tellers, or at least be written in, I don't know, someone's journal somewhere, that these two act kind of like bank tellers. Hence why there's a safe there. That safe is like a safety deposit box that you will sometimes get within a bank, where you can basically store all your treasures and then they keep it safe for you, so on and so forth. So it's not a direct banking system, but it will be a system that a player can use into the ways of basically they can put their treasures in there and this, that, and the other. Unless I was able to figure out how you do cloud storage on this, but I'm not entirely sure how you do cloud storage on this one. Though you can just duplicate the object that is already in, and I think that would at least be part of the way of doing it. But I'm not too worried about that right now. Alright, so if we carry on, I'm not going to show off the room up to the left. I want to keep that a bit more surprise. Now, if you follow me on Discord, you might have seen, or if you go and follow me on Discord, you will see some screenshots of this mod already. And there is a screenshot on there that is to do with the room to the left. But in this video, I'm not going to show you the room to the left. So you can either go and look at my Discord, find me on Discord, and have a look at the photo on there, and you'll see the room on the left. Or just download the mod when it gets released, and then you can finally see the room on the left. Then if we carry on, just a bit of a hallway. We got a little stone tablet here, which does actually have a message which you can read, and it's all about the It's a little sort of like oath, I suppose, to a degree, a bit of an oath to the founder of the city, in the same ways that in American schools they pledge their allegiance to the American flag. That it's that kind of thing. It's a pledge of allegiance to the person who founded the city. And if we just go down a bit more of a corridor, and then we come to another door. And if you go through this door, you will end up basically going on the other side of all this to this door here, where you will meet the choo-choo train, choo-choo train kind of thing. It's not really so much a train, but it is a tramway system. Now, unfortunately, due with PlayStation limitations and stuff like that, obviously this thing isn't actually going to actually move, but there will be some basically what would be known as invisible door markers, or basically invisible doors here on this side over here, that will basically then, when you activate it, will take you to the buried city. And then this will also be inside the buried city, which then you can activate the one inside the buried city to get back to the Sunken City, basically. So it's your fast travel system between the both cities, basically. I haven't got the doors in just yet, but that's because I haven't really done that much on the buried city just yet. So there's no need to. It's a little basic tour. I'm not going to go into great detail about everything and this, that, and the other, la 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 la. You have to wait till you download the mod to have a look at it in more detail. I'm just giving you a little snippet tour. But right, so we're going to turn off the Havoc simulation to stop the fish and freeze the fishing time, basically. But right, so we're just going to turn the lights off as far, because it just makes it a bit easier when it comes to doing this for nav meshing. Alright, so to the crux of the video, nav meshing. Oh boy, do I love it. I really don't. It's a hate-hate relationship. I hate Navmesh, and Navmesh hates me. But right, so Navmeshing. We're going to basically discover the basics of Navmesh. Nothing too complex, nothing too complicated. This, that, and the other. Just generalised basics. There might be some things that are also kind of like general basic that I will miss or won't cover. But that's just to keep things simple and easy enough for people to follow if they try to use this as a sort of like a guide on how to learn how to do Navmeshing. Or at least the basics of Navmeshing. Right, so to activate the Navmesh, now you can see up there you got Navmesh up here. On the bar up here you got Navmesh. You can click on this, but you can't do anything with it. Not at the moment. As you can see, you got different things. Yes, you can go on advanced, but we're not going to worry about that right now. But so, the first thing you actually want to do is click on this mark here, Nav Mesh mode. So you can either just press Control E, or just basically just click the marker, and then boom, you get this little fun thingy bob here. Now this thing, most of the time to do simple nav meshing, you won't really mess around with this one all too much, to be honest, as there are little shortcut keys that you can do as well, which makes things a little bit easier. You know, so for example, it's like create, you know, when you want to create a triangle because you connected vertices together, it's just easier to use the keyboard and mouse rather than using this box thing up here, blah blah blah. This is just to help you with basically what basically mode you want to see it in. If you got it in this mode, then you'll see basically the nav mesh in a much more prominent, stronger red color, and basically not so transparent. This one, the middle view, will basically make the nav mesh a bit more transparent. So therefore, if you got a lot of nav mesh that's overlapping other nav mesh that's further down below it, it's very easy to get yourself confused. So that's why it's better to keep it on this one here, the view mode standard. And then you have view mode nav mesh only, which basically just completely gets rid of the map. There you go, posh, Sunken City, pop down of existence, and then just bring it back. You know, click on that or click on that. Don't really matter. But we're probably going to be keeping it on the standard view mode because that's just the simple basics for it. And the only other thing we really need to worry about when it comes to simple basic nav meshing with this little bar here is this little tick where it says finalize current cells nav mesh. You will do that basically once your nav mesh is all done, because that finalizes your nav mesh. Right. Now that we have this little bar up here, we can now click on this and click on generation. We don't need to go to auto generate world space. We don't need to go through all of this. This is all stuff that in basics means bugger all, basically. But one thing I will advise basically is if you're trying to finalize nav mesh and it isn't nav meshing, well, not nav meshing, if it's not finalizing for some reason, which obviously will be explained at the end of this video, if it's not finalizing in ways of like if you're clicking like finalize world space, for example, so you create yourself a little island, you've done a little bit of nav mesh, you want to finalize it, you're finalizing it, you try and get it so followers can follow you to your island, and the nav mesh isn't finalizing because you don't get a green triangle under those yellow markers that are for door connections. If you don't get those, then move the marker around and try a different piece of nav mesh. One thing to never do, or it's very very ill advised to do, is to force finalize. It is very ill advised to basically force finalize world space and force finalize all spaces. Avoid those if you can, because there are some nav meshes in the game that aren't technically actually finalized or aren't connected correctly or connected properly. So then if you try and force finalize it, you can cause a few problems. So do not force finalize your nav mesh, only finalize, and if it can't finalize, then move your marker around and then try again to finalize. If it doesn't work on this bar, on this drop down menu here, then just keep trying it with this tick here. If it's still not working, I will leave a link in the description below to the Creation Kit modification that I got from Nexus, and I will leave a link in the description below. as that it has made it a lot easier for Navmesh to finalize. I've noticed. So I will leave a link in the description below to that mod as well. You don't need any complicated stuff to download it or whatever that this that and the other. It doesn't really add anything to the game. It's literally you download it and it adds it into your data file. The only thing you might have to do is extract the files and add them into your and just add it into the data file where your creation kit executionable is. That's it. And then in the description of the actual modification itself, it does give you some basic rundowns of how to install it, what you need to do to make sure it's installed, then this, that and the other. I'm not going to go through it here because it will be here for ages and I can't remember it all off the top of my head anyway. But right, so, just to recap. To get this up, this little bar here up, you click on this thing up here. Only when you click on this thing here can you click on this and use generation. Most of the time you will want to keep it on standard mode, and if not, you will probably more likely go for the one in the middle. More than likely. But normally most of the time you'll just go for standard mode because it's easier to tell what you're connecting that way. And the only other main thing to worry about really, I would say, is the tick, which is about finalization. And also, with finalization, never force finalize a world space if you're creating a world space, or force finalize all spaces if you're just trying to finalize it, because you can cause problems if you do. Alright, now we're going to move on up to generation. So we've got a bunch of different generations. Now advanced, just very quickly get out of the way, advanced brings this up. So you got all of these numbers here. You know, veiled vertex distance, max angle, simplification level, longest edge length, this, that, la la la. Most of this is basically kind of like what it says on the tin, pretty much. You know, max angle basically is a 45-degree angle. Is that basically just it means what's the highest angle a piece of Navmesh can generate itself at without it being manually generated. And you can change it from 45 degrees to 50 degrees to 35 degrees to 90 degrees to whatever you want it to be. Simplification level is literally basically you know, it will probably generate less Navmesh in a way, so it will make the Navmesh triangles a little bit bigger, so there's less small thin triangles and thin gaps and this, that and the other. But if it's been simplified, that does mean that sometimes the AI might try walking through a wall or walking through tables or chairs or stuff like that because there's Navmesh going underneath it and this, that and the other, you know. So basically the less simplified your Navmesh is, the more complex it's going to be and the more detailed it's going to be. The more simplified Navmesh is, the less detailed it's going to be and the more straightforward it's going to be, and therefore then the more it's going to be a little bit more NPC unfriendly, but not game breaking or anything like that. It just means there'll be some places where they might try walking into a wall. Longest edge length. It's pretty self-explanatory. Corner simplify threshold. Basically, what, you know, the degrees of the corner. What's the threshold of that corner? Of basically, because Navmesh is always primarily it's always a triangle because it's triangulating. So that's why you know it always you will always draw it out as a triangle. And then obviously you can turn that triangle into a square, turn that square into something else, bang, 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 bang. Edge swap, max angle, overlap distance, balance split length. You know, this is slightly more advanced kind of stuff, so I'm not going to worry about this and worry about that. And then you got a lot of other things here as well, like generate objects. Now, an object is basically, for example, this rug here, that's an object. This bit of hallway here, that's an object. these stairs that are just underneath. Let's move that out of the way. These stairs here, that's an object. You know, so an object is basically something that you build with. That's an object. Landing objects is more likely what you would use for doing world spaces, because objects again is basically what I've just explained, in the ways of like the rug's an object, the stairs an object, a hall is an object, blah 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 blah. A rock is an object, but with world spaces you can actually do height map editing, which is basically you literally draw your own landmass. Now that landmass is the land in landing objects. Though doing it with this can sometimes leave the nav mesh a bit spotty in areas, so it is something to keep an eye on. Finalize is obviously just finalize, and then undo last is just undo last. Connecting stairs is that you can literally connect the stairs, because you have to connect stairs a little bit differently normally to actually get characters to actually go up and down stairs, so it's a little bit different. But of course, obviously, we're not going to go too much more into this, because we're going to do because we've got the other lots to actually go through. So let's go back to generation. So object-based generation. Now object-based generation basically will be that you will need to select an object, which is kind of counterintuitive of Navmesh in the first place, because one thing you need to remember to do before Navmeshing is sometimes you might have that, you might have an object selected like this, so you obviously got the little like green and red bars going around the outside. If you're going to do Navmesh, you need to make sure that nothing is selected. So basically you got, at the moment I got that pillar selected. Now if I click it there, it's no longer selected. Now as at the moment, nothing is selected. It is all selected free. Now we can Navmesh. Why this is, I'm not actually 100% sure as to why, but you can't really Navmesh if you've got something selected in the random window. So you want to make sure that you got nothing selected, and then you can do your Navmeshing. Which then that kind of comes to kind of counterintuitive when it comes to object-based generation, because to do object-based generation you need to have objects selected. So to do this one, I will need to select everything, which I can technically do, but I'm not going to, because object-based generation is pretty bollocks, to be honest. It's pretty shit. I wouldn't really bother with object-based generation. I would rather use the other ones and then just tweak the Navmesh by hand if needs be. That's what I would prefer to do. Then we have Havoc-based generation. Now what Havoc-based generation does, now that doesn't mean it actually bases the Navmesh on the generation of the Havoc's physics engine directly, or whatever Havoc does within the game. It probably does in some manner, but not directly. But what Havoc-based generation will do is that it will import multiple different shapes of triangles and other different shapes of different types of nav meshing, thin, wide, long, short, fat, round, not round, but fat, even more triangular, but it will import a lot of nav mesh rather than needing to actually try and draw it out behind the scenes. Now Havoc based will give you a bit more of a much clearer kind of nav mesh and a bit more slightly better detailed nav mesh, but it does take longer to do it. It does take quite a while. It depends. I suppose it depends on the size of the space that you're nav meshing. If you're nav meshing something that's very big, it's going to take a while. If you're nav meshing somewhere pretty small, it might not take that long. Maybe half an hour. It may take 5 minutes. It all depends on the power of your computer as well, I think. I think that also plays a little bit of a part in it, because it's got to do a lot of processing, because it's got to generate all this information. So habit-based generation is what I would normally go to do if recast-based doesn't work. Now the only reason why I used recast-based is just because it's the one, yes, it's not the tidiest. It doesn't generate you the tidiest nav mesh, and a lot more tweaking will probably need to be done. But it is the one that tends to generate generates the fastest, and still gets you, a generally good result in it as well. And you can normally kind of tell once you kind of start to understand all the numbers down here, you can kind of tell how far through nav meshing is how much of the nav meshing is done, how much of it's been basically generated and just waiting to be implemented in. So if you're gonna basically follow my advice, I would basically not do object based. I wouldn't worry about that. I've tried that a few times, and it's on and off. Habit-based generation is better. Obviously, use habit-based generation if you're doing a large area, and I mean a large open area, like a large open cave or something like that. Habit-based is probably your better option. Recast-based is better for like houses, small little dungeons, player homes, small buildings, this that kind of stuff, this that and the other. So so basically, if you're doing a player home, go recast based. If you're doing a big ass dungeon, some big ass dungeon that takes place in a massive cavern or something like that, then go havoc based. But right, so another thing to now, this might just be on my computer. I don't know if it's on other people's computers. I have no idea. This is why me and Navmesh have a hate relationship. Is once you start nav meshing, it is very easy for you to crash the creation kit. So basically, if you're going to nav mesh, one, save before you do it, just to be safe, and two, once you've started the nav mesh generation, just leave your computer alone and just let it run its course, because it's very easy to cause the creation kit to crash when generating nav mesh. So I'm not going to start generating it and then stop recording, because I'm going to then crash the creation kit. So I'm not going to do that. Alright, so just to recap, just before we hopefully then come back later on with nav mesh all done, just to recap, is basically advanced. Go for advanced if you start to understand a bit more about nav meshing, or have learned a bit more about nav meshing, then start going using advanced. If you're doing a small player home, or a small shop, or small building, or a small to medium sized dungeon, then do recast. Especially if the dungeon's like hallways and stuff like that, then do recast. If you're doing a very large dungeon, or if it's a dungeon that is more of an open spaced kind of like cave, cavern kind of style thing, then do havoc based generation, because it will just be a better input for that kind of space. So right, I'm going to go and get this nav mesh basically generated, and once it's generated, I will be back. So see you in a second, because let's face it, I'm not going to be gone for that long, am I? I can cut the video down. Alright, so the nav mesh is now been basically generated, and as you can see, now I can show you demonstrations of basically all these different types of nav mesh that you get here. So here we have the standard view, and this is what the standard view looks like. As you can see, it's very prominent, you can see it very easily, and it's, it stands out. if you go into on top, you know, it kind of fades away a bit. This is sort of more happy to see multiple layers of it. But if you're just doing like a single layer, kind of a single, you know, on a singular level, this mode wouldn't really help you all that much too well. I personally myself, I don't think it'll help you that well. And obviously, if you go for the last one, obviously just get rid of it, and then you can obviously see the nav mesh very clearly. The only problem is that you can't, you know, there's no reference points, because obviously you can't see any more of the building or whatever it is that you've nav meshed, so you don't really get any kind of like referencing for anything. So we're gonna stick it back onto here, and right, so we're going to have a look at some basics on nav meshing. So first off, we are going to have a look at this by disconnecting some simple things. So each nav mesh will always be some form of triangle. It's the way that it works. It's the way that it is. It's always a triangle. It's never a square, never a circle, never an octagon, pentagon, hexagonal, perpendicular, whatever. It's always triangle. It's always triangular. And you know, obviously in each corner normally, so you know, so you got this one here, and there you go. You know, you click on it, it turns green. You know, therefore you can see the triangle a bit better, and you can see the three corners of each nav mesh. Now those little tiny red squares, these little things, are vertices, and this is basically what you will connect together to actually basically connect the nav mesh. So as you can see, we got a bit of a gap here. So this is one thing that does tend to happen with recasting. It can happen with Havoc based generation as well, but primarily tends to more happen with recast based generation. Is that every now and then, you know, there'll be some pieces missing. Now you could try recasting again, but that probably wouldn't really change anything. And if you Havoc base generate the nav mesh, then it's just basically going to override the entire thing, you know. So it's a question of how much of this gap, you know, how many like breaks, you may as well call it as a break, is basically how many of these are there actually in the nav mesh. If there's not that many, you may as well finish it off by hand manually. If there's quite a lot, then probably Havoc based generation probably might be a better way for you to go. So I'm going to do this manually by hand, because there's probably going to be a few pieces like this, but it won't take me that long to do. So how do you connect vertices? How do you generate a triangle? So basically, so obviously to create a triangle, you are going to need to select 3 vertices. So you're going to need to select that. And you can tell it's selected because it does the same thing as a triangle, and it turns green. Now the only problem is if you then say you go and click on the next one, it, as you can see, it's now green there, but that's gone back to red, so that's no longer selected. So obviously if I try and connect anything up, that's not going to work either. So what you will need to do is you will basically need to select one, then press Control on your keyboard, and then select the next vertice with the left mouse button, and then as you can see we now have 2, and then same again, Control on the keyboard, left mouse button, and then we've got 3 vertices. Right, so once you've got your 3 vertices selected, all you then need to do is literally just press A on the keyboard, and boom, it connects it. Nice and easy. So then, once you've done that, you can see 2 of the vertices are now selected, but no third one. So again, you just basically just go to your next one you want to connect, which we're going to say is this one. Press A on the keyboard, and then boom, there you go. Then we're going to move over a little bit, move the camera, and then we're going to connect these 2. Control left mouse button, A. Control left mouse button, A. Control left mouse button, and then A, and then Control left mouse button, A, and rinse and repeat until basically you've got connected up what you wanted to be connected up. Now, it doesn't matter how many triangles connected one vertices. You can connect a lot of them to a singular vertices, but you tend to try and not connect too many to them. I think it just makes it a bit easier for the AI to basically navigate it rather than there being so many different ones connected into one spot. But for this, I think it'll work fine. Now, as you can see here, there is some stuff that is missing here, and I could spend a bit of time connecting all this up, this, that, and the other, but how do you put in your own vertices? Because you can draw, so-called draw Navmesh in. So what you can do is you can basically put in your own vertices. To do that, all you need to do is basically just... Now, it depends on certain aspects of the... wherever you're placing it. Sometimes you'll have, like, either objects there, or you'll have, like, for example, let's see if I can show you here. Run habit simulation. As you see, I got this like kind of like weird misty stuff. It's going a bit funny on the screen, but you know, I got this kind of weird misty stuff. Now, if I was to, sometimes if you to try and draw a vertices on that, it may end up floating in the air, and sometimes it doesn't. So if I was to do it again, to say here, it doesn't. You know, it doesn't float up. But sometimes you'll come to realise, you know, you're drawing the vertices, and for some reason it'll be like up there. You know, up in the air. You don't want it up in the air. You want it on the ground. If you want to bring it basically back down to the ground, all you gotta do is just hold the Z or Z button, the Z for zebra or zebra, depends on wherever you're from, and just basically, once you got the 4 arrowed crosshair, just basically use the left mouse button to basically get a hold of it and bring it down. So you can move your mouse up and down whilst holding the Z button, and you can move it up and down. So you bring it basically back down to ground level. But how did I draw that? So to draw a vertices like this, all you've literally got to do is just literally click the rice? Oh, I can't English. Click the right mouse button. Now, as you can see, boom, there you go. It's suddenly floating in the air for no apparent reason, but we can just press delete and it will get rid of it. So we're going to go a little bit closer to the ground, and again, the right, Jesus Christ, the right mouse button, right, and then boom, and then there you go. So you basically connect them by holding down Control on the keyboard and clicking with the left mouse button, and you draw them in place by just clicking the right mouse button. You don't need to press anything on the keyboard, you just literally use the right mouse button and then bosh. And then you just basically just start connecting them together like you normally would with any other Navmesh. There we go. So once again, it's just basically turn 3 vertices into green, and then press A, and you draw your Navmesh. Pretty simple. And then you can move them about by just literally putting your mouse cursor over them, holding the left mouse button, and then you can just move it about, and you can make some like little minor adjustments with it here like this as well, and so on and so forth. There's obviously just experiment around with it a little bit, and you know, you'll eventually get used to it. That's the thing. Navmesh, it seems more complicated than it actually is. When it comes to doing the basics of Navmesh, it's not too difficult, and you know, it took me a little bit of time to be like, actually, I'm gonna learn how to do it manually by hand. At first, I was always just recast, and then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna have a go at drawing it myself. You know, actually placing Navmesh manually by hand, and yeah, once you get used to it, once you understand the basics, it's not too difficult. yeah, when you start getting into the more advanced kind of stuff of Navmesh and the more complicated stuff of Navmeshing, yeah, it can get a bit like what? Because of you got all these different phrases and different numbers and this and that and the other. But for basic Navmeshing is once you've done it a few times, it's pretty easy, to be honest. But right, so we're going to cover one last thing in Navmeshing, which is how to connect in stairs, basically. Because sometimes when you're connecting stairs, you have to kind of connect them a little bit differently compared to just normal nav mesh. Because it's got to act as a natural slope, and that's got to basically, the AI's got to see that as an actual walkable slope rather than walkable ground. It's a tiny difference in it. So as you can see, this staircase it's only half there, but it's a bit messy. The recast made it a bit messy. So what we're going to do is we're going to tidy this up a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to left click and delete. Left click and delete. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of just a few more of these triangles. Or you can get rid of the vertices. It's entirely up to you which ones you do. We're going to move that one over. But before we do that, we're going to move this one over just so it's not overlapping. Then move that one over. And then we're going to move this one over. And then we're going to move that one just a little bit more. And then we're going to move this one over. Right, so now as you can see, we got one full straight line going across the entire staircase at the top. And we're going to do the same again, but with the bottom of the stairs. So I'm going to get rid of this, if it'll allow me to get rid of it. God damn it. So right, so we'll get rid of that. Then we're going to move this, and we're going to move it to here, and then we're going to move this up to here. Right, so now, as you can see, we got a straight line going across here at the bottom of the stairs, and a straight line going across the top of the stairs. So then what you're going to want to do is you want to get, basically, to get that yellow line to turn red. When that I can't speak, it's late. When you get that yellow line red, you want to basically double click it with the left mouse button, and then you'll see this vertices and this vertices has turned green. Then you want to go to the bottom one. You can do this either way around. You can go from bottom to top or top to bottom. It all depends which one you prefer to do. And then you're going to do this, basically, effectively the same again, but with the bottom. But I normally tend to hold the control button because I think you do have to hold the control button. But if you don't, I just do it because that's what I'm used to doing. So I'm going to hold control button, and then once again, double click it with the left mouse button, and then there you go. As you can see, it's drawn in that nav mesh. So now that is connected. So that is now a connected stair. So now that, since that is now a connected stair, NPCs can walk up and down those stairs. Whether it be just a general NPC or a follower can follow you up and down the stairs, and there's no problems, no issues, nothing wrong, and it's gonna work basically. And I could do the same with the stairs over here as well. So I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna tidy these ones up just because I can. I normally tend to tidy the stairs up like this, just because it's just the way that I do it myself. Yeah, it might be a little bit more time consuming, but it's just the way that I do it. So I'm gonna do it again. So again, yellow line, get it to turn red. Double click with left mouse button. Go to the bottom stairs. Yellow line, get it to turn red. Hold the control button. Double click with left mouse button. And then there you go, connected stairs. And that's some of the basic general basics of nav meshing. Yeah, for some people it might be a lot to take in at first, but once you sort of like messed around with it a little bit, experimented with it a little bit, obviously tested it in game to see what's working, what isn't working, this, that and the other. Once you've done that, you'll start to get in the hang of how nav meshing works. and then you'll be able to basically very easily do nav meshing and get it to work correctly, and then have followers follow you wherever, and people and the NPCs basically actually walk around the place and actually interact with stuff properly, and walk from one room to another room easily, and this, that, and the other, and not just be stood in a static position. Because that's what would happen primarily if there was no nav mesh. But one last thing that we're gonna sort out just before we end this is sometimes when you do recast, you'll get nav mesh on top of your table. If you've got like tables in the room, you'll sometimes get nav mesh on top of the tables. What you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to delete that, basically. You're going to want to delete that nav mesh, get rid of it. It's not needed. It's useless memory, so it's not needed. But also by the fact that that sometimes the AI will try to walk onto that nav mesh, which then unfortunately what will then happen is that basically then they will try and walk on the table, basically. So you just want to make sure there's no nav mesh going under tables, under chairs, over tables, or anything like that. You literally just want the nav mesh to be on the stairs and on the floor, and that is basically it. If it's anywhere else that isn't a walkable surface, and there's nav mesh there, the NPCs may try to walk on it. So remember to delete that. But right, so that is the basics of for nav meshing. So just a little recap. Again, so these might be a little bit, I might be going through this a bit quickly. So we're gonna slow it down a little bit. So to draw a nav mesh triangle, you need to highlight 3 vertices, and you can do that by clicking on the left mouse button on one vertices, then holding the control button on your keyboard, then again left mouse button on the second. Keep that control button down, and then click again on the third vertices. Once you've done that, just press the A button on your keyboard, and then there you go. You have drawn yourself a nav mesh triangle. If I want to draw a piece of a vertice, then I just need to basically find where I want to put it, and click on the right mouse button, and then there we go. We have a vertice. If your vertice seems to be floating in the air, highlight your vertice, left mouse button to be able to actually move it about. Hold down the Z button on your keyboard and move it up and down until it basically reaches the floor. And then there you go. And then you can basically start using it and connecting basically triangles together. To connect stairs, easiest thing to do is to basically have one singular line going across the entire bottom of the staircase, and one singular line going across the entire top of the staircase. But then the line that is yellow that's going across the top, you will basically put your mouse cursor over the top of it until it turns red. Double click it. When you've done that, the vertices on the side will turn green. Then go to your bottom one, your bottom straight line. Do the same again. Get that line to turn red. Then hold down the control button, double click, and then you should end up with basically this, like this. Once you've done that, then your stairs are connected. Right. So, and the final thing for this is, now I'm not gonna do it because I can't finalize yet, because I need to actually get this finished. But once your nav mesh is finished, you've got everything all connected up correctly, all stairs connected, connected. There's no odd nav mesh anywhere, this and the other, and there's no breaks in the nav mesh or anything like that. You are going to want to hit this tick button to finalize it, as basically finalizing it will then allow followers to basically follow you inside and outside of the place. You will know it is finalized, especially for interiors. You will know it is finalized when, say for example, I have this yellow marker here. When I finalize the Navmesh, this triangle here will basically turn green. When it is green, it'd be more like that kind of green. It'd be more a solid green. When it's a solid green, that means that Navmesh is finalized. And once your Navmesh is finalized, you are done. Your Navmesh is finished, and you've basically done it. You've ended it. Now, the best thing for Navmesh is to always do it last. Primarily always do it last. I mean, you can put people in afterwards, you can put in certain objects in afterwards, but if you're going to put in a lot of like furniture and stairs and stuff like that, and walls and stuff like that, you want to make sure you got your basic skeleton, so to speak, of the building done first, and you've got all your furniture in first, so then you've got the obstacles there. Then do your Navmesh. You don't build, you don't create the house, then Navmesh it, then fill it up, because then you're gonna have Navmesh going on tables, and it's just gonna make the AI seem stupid. But right, so that's gonna be it for this video. That's it for this series. So, if you do have any questions, or if there's something that I wasn't very clear on, or if you're still unclear on something that I mentioned, just let me know in the comments below, and I will basically explain it, and I'll try and explain it in a possibly a more clear and probably coherent way of explaining it. But I'll basically try. I'll give you write down a simple guide of how to do it. If this video isn't too clear for you, or if you're still struggling with it because of my bad teaching. Because let's face it, I'm not a teacher, I'm a chef, so I'm not. But yeah, so that's it for this series. That's it for this video. So you probably won't see anything else now to do with A Tale of Two Cities. Until I release a trailer, which I normally tend to do for my larger scale mods, but there won't be any kind of trailer out for it until I finish the Buried City. So once I've done Buried City, then there will be a trailer released, and then you'll get to see a bit, in a much more detailed visual of the Sunken City as well as the Buried City. But right, so that's it. So if you have any questions about Navmeshing, or anything about modding in general that I've covered in this series, whether it be texture swapping, follower creating, creating a merchant, creating someone who can be marriable, just creating a generalized NPC, creating an animal that's friendly, anything like that. Anything that I've covered in this series. If you've still got any questions about that, or not too sure about something about it, just let me know in the comments below. If you've got anything questions about the creation kit or modding that I didn't cover in this series, again, let me know in the comments below. Or you can come and find me on my Discord. I will leave a link in the description where you can post your questions on there. You can also just get some sneaky peeks of future mods and future ideas that I might be planning or will be doing, and this, that and the other. There's some other people on there who you might be able to ask questions for as well, and ways to do with modding, or just generally just hang out and chill and chat. And also you'll be able to get to see a picture of the room on the left hand side, which was not shown in this video. But right, so that's it. So time for me to get out of here. So until next time, I'll see you all later.